Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today in our webinar, Year-End Giving Secrets that Inspire Donors Over the Holidays. Here at Mobile Cause, we're committed to supporting you in running your organization, planning your fundraising initiatives, and better connecting you with your donors. With Giving Tuesday coming up and your year-end giving planning underway, we wanted to give you the smartest fundraising strategies designed to make your nonprofit shine and energize your supporters over the coming months. As always, we'll be sending a recording of this webinar and the webinar slides to all registrants via email. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to submit those via the questions panel in that little tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our panel of speakers today. Sandy Reese is a fundraising coach and consultant specializing in helping nonprofits create diversified revenue streams. She has helped countless nonprofits develop fundraising blueprints and create long-term stability through donor-based strategies. Gail Perry is an international fundraising consultant, keynote speaker, trainer, and philanthropy leader. Her fired-up fundraising approach, developed over the past 30 years as a nonprofit philanthropy expert, has helped organizations raise hundreds of millions in gifts. Thank you both for being here. During this webinar, you'll learn perfect campaign timing, how to leverage your calendar, how to break down your year-end campaign, and creating an integrated approach to your appeal. At the end, we'll have some live Q&A to answer your questions. And again, feel free to submit those questions throughout the session via the questions box. And now we're excited to bring you an information-filled event that will leave you ready for planning an extraordinary year-end campaign. Now, to kick things off, I have a poll here that I'm going to launch. And I'm curious, go ahead and select from the answers directly on your screen, what is the main challenge that you experience with your year-end campaign? So select one of those responses there and hit the submit button. I'll leave this open for 10 or 15 seconds as we get everybody participating. Excellent, the votes are streaming in. I'll leave it open for maybe a little longer. We're at about 60% participation. Wow, looks like a clear winner is already developing here. Okay, close it out in just a couple seconds. So go ahead and get your response in. Excellent. All right, I'm going to close that poll and I'll share the results with you. So by the way, the winner here is developing a convincing appeal. Excellent. Great, sort of situation to be in. And obviously everybody here is in the same boat, seems like. Second place is planning ahead and meeting deadlines. Okay, let me hide those results. And at this point, I'd like to pass things over to Sandy. All yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. That was so fascinating to see that poll. I'm remembering when I sat in the development director's chair that trying to get everything done on time, that was always an issue. I always felt like I was behind the 8 ball, always running, trying to get caught up. And I'm sure that there's lots of you who feel that way too. So one of the things that I want to share with you is what I think makes a huge difference in year-end campaigns, and that is really planning things out and watching the timing. I was just talking with an organization this morning about their year-end activities, and we were saying you can put multiple asks in there and there's opportunities to do lots of thanking, and boy, this is the time of year we want to leverage every single bit of that. And what I know is that if you try to shoot from the hip with that, if you don't have a good plan, if you're making it up as you go, you're going to struggle. It's not going to leave you time to figure out how to create a convincing appeal. It's not going to leave you time to do much of anything. So we want to really look at what perfect campaign timing looks like. And just so you know, I help a lot of small organizations, a lot of small shops figure out what their timing looks like. And that's what I want to share with you today, are some of the tips and some of the things that I have learned. And the first thing is that timing is about making things work for you and making it work for your donors. So yes, it needs to be convenient, but fundraising cannot be all about your own convenience. It's got to also be about what works for your donor, because frankly, if it doesn't work for them, you're not going to raise the kind of money that you're looking for. So we got to keep an eye on that timing. So I have some tips for you on what I consider perfect timing. Number one is be strategic. So what the heck does that have to do with timing? You're not going to have perfect timing when you're deciding at the last minute what you're going to do. You've got to start early. You need to start now to think about everything you want to do between now and the end of the year. And one of the things that I'm a huge believer in is using the calendar. I'm actually going to talk about that in just a minute. But if you just have a one-page calendar where you can jot things down, and if you don't have a calendar, get a just blank piece of paper and get an idea of everything you want to do between now and the end of the year, so that you're purposeful and thoughtful. That's where you're going to have way better chances of raising more money. So once you create that plan, you got to stick to it. How many of us have gone through the exercise of putting some kind of thing together, whether it's a plan, it's a worksheet, whatever it is, and then within 2 days' time, it's at the bottom of a giant pile of paper on your desk, right? So we have to keep those things handy. And once you create a plan, and it doesn't have to be a complicated thing, you want to keep it really handy and refer back to it often. And you're also going to be able to use that to get coworkers on board, volunteers on board, and your board on board. When you have everything written down, it's so much easier to go to your board and say, here's our plan for year-end fundraising. Where would you like to plug in? And by the way, that works a whole lot better than showing up to your board and say, I need everybody to do fill in the blank. We call that herding. It doesn't really work. My other tip for you for timing is really using that calendar to your advantage. And that means looking at everything else that's going on in your organization, and making sure that everything works together. So for example, the organization I was talking to this morning is an animal rescue group. It's a humane society. They've got a shelter. And as we were looking at what we wanted to do in terms of fundraising, I was asking them, what adoption events do you have on the schedule? What do you have, an open house? Is there anything else that's going on program-wise? Because I want to look at everything. I want to leverage that calendar. I want to see everything that's going on with the organization so that I can make sure I'm not planning some fundraising activity on the same day that there's like the huge annual open house going on. I want to make sure that it's all working together and very leveraged. And what I might also be able to do is look at the timing of some of those activities. For example, if there is an open house, I want to time the fundraising activities so that they build on one another. It's not this one thing happening in a silo and that thing happening in a silo, but that we're integrating everything. So that when people are coming to an adoption day, they're coming to an open house, those may be people who may want to also make a year-end gift. And I want to make sure that we are providing them with that opportunity. When you're shooting from the hip, when you don't have a plan, you'll never be able to do that because you can't keep up with what's going on and what's coming up next and what you might be able to really get the most out of. So let's look at what leveraging the calendar could look like in some really practical terms. I am all about practicality. I'm all about examples and samples and not just theoretic fundraising and how that kind of works. So what I want to show you is looking at the calendar. It's October 11th. You still have quite a bit of the month of October left. You've got November, you've got December. What could you be doing so that by the time you hit midnight on New Year's Eve, you can turn around and look at what you've accomplished and say, that's awesome, that feels really good. So I would start in October and do a number of things. One, I would roll out what I call the website welcome mat, and that is making sure that your website is ready for visitors. If your website still has announcements about events that are happening in 2015, you've got some work to do. You need to make sure that your website is ready for visitors, that the donate now button is easy to find, and frankly, I would go test it. Go test, make a small donation to your own organization and just see what they see. Does it have the right information on it? Do they get a receipt immediately? Once the donation is processed, does it go to a thank you page? What's on that thank you page? All of that stuff you want to plan out and have a look at and make sure that it is what you want it to say. You don't want to find out after a couple hundred people have already been to the website, you don't want to find out that the button isn't working or that the receipt is clunky or that the language is not welcoming. You want to pick out some hot stories that you can use for the rest of the year? This is a great time to be lining up your speaking gigs. Anything that you can do to raise awareness is going to help you raise money between now and the end of the year. So it's a good time to be thinking about stories that you can be pitching to the media and get those speaking gigs lined up. You could be sending out a fall appeal in October. There's plenty of time to line up the asks that you want to make. And I'm a big believer that you need to start in October with a fall appeal. That's the time when smart organizations are sending out those letters, is frankly now. And if you don't have one queued up, you can still make it happen. You can still get it going. Now is a great time to be planning Giving Tuesday and what you're going to do with that campaign, and to send out some kind of an email update. Now, don't necessarily call it a newsletter. I mean, it is a newsletter, but don't call it a newsletter. It's an update. You want to use that tool to keep people in the know, to keep them feeling really good about what your organization is doing, to give them a story that makes them go, wow, I love that organization. That's really, in my opinion, the key to success in fundraising, is doing what it takes for your donors to say, wow, what a cool organization. Because when you do that, they're going to come back and give again. They're going to tell their friends. They're going to share it on social media. They're going to tell everybody they know how awesome your organization is. And it's really not that hard, but it does require a little thought. So those are some things you can do now in October. Then in November, here's a few more things you can do. You can do a thankathon, which is just a really simple way to call all of your donors from this year to tell them thank you. I don't know, I'd love to hear Gail's thoughts on this, because I know she's also a big believer in thankathon. I think the last time I got a thank you phone call from a nonprofit was probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm just astonished, because I tell you what, guys, I give to a lot of organizations, and apparently I don't give enough to be important enough to be called. And if I did, it would knock my socks off. If an organization called me just to say, hey, your gift is important, we appreciate your support this year, thank you, I would be impressed by that. And I would be thinking about, wow, I want to make sure I give them another gift before the end of the year. Those thankathons, by the way, can be done very simply, very easily. Just gather up some friends, print off the list of donors with their phone numbers, and start calling. You're going to be promoting Giving Tuesday in November. November is also a really great time to do a thank you video for your donors. This is something that I consider a secret sauce for fundraising during year end. I've got a lot of clients who do these, and they go really, really well. It's a simple little video that you shoot just to say thank you, to give the donors an idea of how their donation has made a difference this year. So actually another animal group that I work with, and I do work with a fair number of animal groups, this one's in Nashville, and they did a thank you video last year where they basically said, hey, every time that we were out picking up stray animals, you were there. Every time we did a spay-neuter surgery, you were there. And each of these scenes, there were about 8 or 10 of these scenes, and they were shot with those staff members in that area that they're working. So it was sweet, it was authentic. It was those staff people saying, thank you so much. And at the end of it, my heart was just melting. I'm like, I want to give a big gift to you guys. I love this. And what they told me was, after they sent that out, so they shot that video and they sent it out, they put it on YouTube, sent out an email with a link to the video, and like by the end of the day, they had so many comments back from donors saying that was awesome, and they were wanting to share it on social media and on Facebook and things, and it worked incredibly well. So it hit that mark of making those donors feel really good about giving to that organization, and it turned those donors into ambassadors, because now not only are they all going, wow, I love the video, they're all now sharing that video. They're letting their friends know what a cool organization. So that thank you video, that can be super hot. And there's an article on my blog, by the way, about how to do those thank you videos. And I think there's a link to a couple of samples in there you may want to look at. So again, with the email update in November, you got to balance the asking with these things that are going to make donors feel really good. So in November, if you do a thankathon, you do the thank you video, you do a newsletter, then your donors are ready to be asked again in December. The danger here is, if all you do during year end is show up with your handout, if you are sending out letters and you're sending out email appeals and that's all you're doing, you're going to wear people out. And again, the way you balance that is with these non-ask activities, the thankathon, the videos, a holiday card. That's a great way to start December. If you don't want to do a holiday card, you can do a Thanksgiving card. There's a lot of organizations doing that. If you really want to hit the ball out of the park, do some individual thank you videos. What that looks like is picking out your top 5, top 10 donors and sending them a video that calls them by name in the video. So, sorry, my good example on this one is another animal group. This was a shelter over in North Carolina, and they did this. They picked out their top, I think they did their top 5 or 6 donors. And so in the video, you have the shelter director holding a puppy and saying, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this is Christy at the Humane Society, and we just wanted to say thank you for your support this year. I've got little Paco with me, and you can see he's very healthy now, and he maybe wasn't so healthy when he came in, but he's doing great, and we really appreciate all your support." And so they had this one donor that had given a gift of, it was about $2,000, which was nice. That was a big gift for them. And they sent this personalized thank you video, and the next week they got another check in the mail from this donor for another $3,500. It was crazy. They called me and they said, "Oh my gosh, we can't believe how great this was." And I said, "Well, go do it again." Do those individual thank you videos. It warms people's hearts. They absolutely eat it up. And the nice thing about it is it's easy. You can shoot those with your smartphone. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take a long time, and it's very affordable. In December is when you want to be pitching a story to the media. The week between Christmas and New Year's is a very slow news week. And so if you can, like maybe the second week in December, if you can pitch a story to the news and tell them, "Hey, I would love for you to run this story the week after Christmas," they will thank you for that. The reporters are looking for stories that they can put in the can and have ready to go that week. So that's a great week to get in into the media. Then the last week, so right after Christmas, you do want to do a year-end appeal where at a minimum you need to send out an email on the 26th and an email on the 31st to let people know that is their last chance to give for the year. Now, if you feel like doing more in between, you can do an email on the 26th and another one maybe on the 29th. You could do one on the 30th if you want, the 31st. And I know everybody has a different level of comfort with sending out a lot of emails. At a minimum, you need to do those too, because if you don't, you are conspicuously absent. All the other nonprofits that know what they're doing, they are out there sending out those emails, and if you don't, you will get left behind. So those are some really practical things that you can leverage as the calendar starts to turn and we go from one month to the next. Now, the other thing that you can do is literally take a calendar and start laying out all these things on the calendar and then break it into some detail. This is an activity I do a lot with clients, and everybody loves it. For each thing that you put on your calendar, so for example, you decide you want to put a thankathon on your calendar and you're going to put it on, let's say, November 12th. I have no idea what day of the week that is, but whatever, November 12th. Then in order for that to happen on November 12th, what are all the steps that have to happen before that in order for that activity to happen? So you want to think about the result that you want, break that activity into some little tiny steps, and then work backward, putting each step on the calendar. And if you do that, then it's so much easier to guarantee your success. You'll make sure that you're getting things done without it all being at the last minute. You see, I've shared a goal here, like if you want to get your e-newsletter out by December 15th, what needs to happen so that you can hit send on that newsletter on December 15th? You don't want to be thinking about it for the first time on December 14th. You don't want to do that to yourself. It's incredibly stressful, and I don't want to see anybody do that. When you take every one of these things that you want to do, whether it's a Giving Tuesday, it's a newsletter, it's an appeal, it's a thankathon, and you go walk through this calendaring activity where you think about all the steps that are required to make that activity come off successfully, you break them into little pieces and you put those on the calendar, you will have an action plan. And that action plan is so much easier for you to manage and for you to make sure that you get done what you want done and that it all flows smoothly. It will reduce your stress level, and it'll also enable you to pull other people in, which is super duper handy. So one of the things that I would love for you to do, if you got an idea from this section on perfect timing, I would love for you to just jot that down for yourself. and then find a place on your calendar and on your schedule to plug it in so that you can get started working on your year-end fundraising plan. So to make sure that you get the most that you can get from your year-end fundraising this year. Now, I know a lot of people like the idea of that, the calendar. And so I wanted to share with you that I do have a template. We call it the summary calendar, and it's super duper handy just for broad stroke activities and seeing what you want to put on there and when. And I'll invite you to go download that for yourself at getfullyfunded.com/plan. There's just a place for you to put your name and email in, and then we're going to email it right to you. And you can modify that, make it work for you, change it up, but at a minimum, it'll give you a way to start thinking about in categories of activities what you want to do between now and the end of the year, and then you can use it for planning next year as well, if you like. We've shared this with dozens, probably really thousands of people at this point. I forget how many people we've shared this with, and people absolutely love it. So especially if you're in a small shop, if you've got a lot going on, you might really enjoy this template, and I'm really happy to share that with you. All right, so that's what I have to share with you about perfect timing for year-end fundraising. And Alex, I'll turn it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sandy. Now we're excited to hear from our next speaker today, Gail. I'll go ahead and pass things over to you. All yours.
Hey, thank you so much. This is so cool, and we've got so many people ready for this webinar. I'm so pleased really to be able to share with you my ideas, and I just want to give you a vote of confidence. You are smart, you are thoughtful, you are go-getter fundraisers, you're taking the time to get this training, and so use this training and let's make a huge difference, because I just so believe in I'm just amazed at all the different organizations who are here. And I guess you know that Sandy is definitely an animal person. and I have my other favorite charities too that I'll be giving some examples about. But I want to also tell you that if you go to my website, firedupfundraising.com, I've got 86 blog posts about year-end fundraising. So if you can go to my site and you can look in the search bar in the upper right-hand corner, and you can put in appeal letter. I know a lot of people are looking at how to make a smart appeal, and there's some great stuff on my site that's free that I welcome you to download and study and use, really. Let's see, how do I change these slides? There we go, there we go. I want to talk about the whole concept of a campaign, because it was really interesting to hear that so many of you are struggling with how to make an effective, powerful appeal. And a lot of the things I'm going to be sharing with you are going to be secrets on how to do that. One of the things you want to do is create a real life campaign. And I have seen too many organizations who should know better rely on just one appeal letter, and they think that's their year end, and they are wasting such a huge opportunity. A campaign is a true campaign. It's a multiple series of things that are happening. There's a drumbeat that you build up in your donors' frame of consciousness, in their overloaded brain, right, of what's happening with your organization. And this is just an example. Sandy was sharing with you examples of a timeline, examples of how to get scheduled. And my favorite way to approach an appeal is you have a warm-up letter, and then you have an appeal letter, and you have a follow-up letter. So a snail mail appeal series would be 3 different drops. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more. I'm going to show you some data that's going to make you impress upon you why it's so important to do the follow-up letter. And also, all the direct mail and digital fundraising pundits say that you should be emailing at least every 2 weeks, if not every week, during your campaign season. And you can also supplement your campaign, a series of drum beats. You know, you've got social media. We've got personal notes. You can do personal visits. You can have events at your organization, and you can do phone calls. And I don't want to overwhelm you or confuse you, but this is the one time a year when creating this series of activities can be huge for you. So let me just show you a little bit more about what I mean by a campaign, and then I'm going to dissect some of these ideas, and I'm going to show you specific tips on how to create a powerful appeal itself. But for one thing, if you can integrate your messages across channel, I know it took me a while to really understand all these vocabulary words, channels, and integration, but the whole notion of having the same look and the same brand. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I'll show you some examples. But what we're doing is that the same message is showing up in all the different places. And that way you're driving your message home. So you might use the same image, you might use the same coloring, you might use the same ask, but it is fully integrated. And I think when you can reflect on your Facebook page or in your social media post the same thought series or stories or whatever that you're also talking about online and in your newsletter and in your events and everything, it magnifies the power and the impact of your message, hands down. And so let's see, let's look at the second slide. You know, the beauty of it is that you're reinforcing your message, because you're, as you know, we're all exhausted, we're all overloaded. Your donor has many things pulling at their inbox and their attention span, and you need to be in touch cheerfully and often. And please do not hold back, because everybody else is in touch cheerfully and often. And I know you've got board members who say, oh, don't do so many appeals, don't do direct mail, don't do phone calls, don't do emails. I don't like that personally. And what you have to say back to your board members is, the reason we do this is because it works. The reason we do this is because it works, because you have to reinforce your message. There's a famous graph for the for-profit sector about advertising messages. And the graph goes like, the first time a consumer hears an advertising message, there's no recognition. First, second, third, fourth. It takes the seventh time a consumer sees or hears an advertising message for the recognition to start to go up. And that also works for nonprofits as well. And you're using the same call to action over and over in all of your appeals. And you know, talking a little bit about the follow-up letter, it's really interesting. Why would you want to do a follow-up letter? So you do your direct mail drop to your donor base, and you say you send out 2,500 letters, and you've got 1,000 gifts, right? You've got 1,000 gifts. Why would you want to go to the trouble of creating another a follow-up letter? And some people say, oh, it's too expensive to do the follow-up letter. But Mal Warwick, the great direct mail expert, he's written like 21 books on direct mail fundraising. I interviewed him a few years ago before he retired, just to sort of capture the message from the master. And he said, what drove home to me the most was this whole idea about a follow-up appeal. One appeal might bring about a 14% return or something, but a follow-up appeal or a telephone call can raise that return up to about 42%. So run the numbers. If you think your first direct mail drop can bring in 20% return and you can raise it to 42%, it's worth the time and energy to do the follow-up. And the follow-up letter is very short and sweet, and it needs to be paper. You know, we haven't heard from you yet. The kids are counting on you. The animals are counting on you. We hope you'll join in this. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon to make this happen. We miss you, and we hope don't miss out on this year. You know, something really cheerful, get on the bandwagon, gung-ho, not preachy, not formal, but very encouraging, and making the donor feel like it's a lot of fun and they don't want to miss out. Because I'll tell you, your donor may have your letter over in a stack of mail and they have forgotten to respond. They have forgotten to respond. So let's talk a little bit about a look. Because part of creating a compelling appeal, there are lots of different pieces of it, but there's a look and there's a visual brand. You're using the same colors, and maybe you want to use a slightly different look from your regular organization's messages. Maybe your year-end campaign has a slightly different font, slightly different format. It's really worth it to engage a designer, but you have to be sure you're using a designer some designers will make it just look pretty, and they'll really weaken it as a communications device. Other designers understand that it's got to not only look good, but it's got to communicate as well. But you can see here in this example that here's a website, and then here is a mobile view of the same message. That could be a Facebook ad or whatever, I can't quite tell, but it looks the same. it looks the same, and therefore you're landing in your donor's brain that this is a fabulous organization that they love and that they want to they believe in and they want to support. So, you know, it's not complicated. This is a key part about creating an effective appeal, an effective ask, is that you are creating this theme that you're talking about over and over. For example, you know, this year our fall campaign is focusing on our kids' playground equipment, or our fall campaign is focusing on our kids' art education in the entire community. And then you can you can feature pictures of kids, cute little pigtails and freckles and braces, grinning at the camera, holding their art, you know, holding their lunchbox, whatever. It makes your donor's heart break and makes your donor want to give. And, you know, you can have a consistent theme. You know, it's a consistent goal. We have a goal, $550,000 this fall to fund the river watchers who are doing blah, blah, blah. I truly think that I know for a fact that you will raise more money if you do have a specific project that you're trying to fund. And I know you're going to push back and you're going to say, Gail, we have to do a general and unrestricted ask. We have to do something generic. And I will say to you, and you can go to my website, you can read this blog post, that a general and unrestricted ask is lazy fundraising, because it is possible to make a general ask and still talk about a specific project. And for example, if I'm going to talk about the river watchers in this project, I can say, this year our fall campaign goal is $550,000. Your gift to the goal will help fund help us run the River Watcher program. And the River Watchers do this and this and this and this. And so the key word is run, or help underwrite the entire program to do blah, blah, blah. And so underwriting or running a program is admin costs. And this is a very quick and dirty explanation. So if you want me to explain it more, I will. But there are ways to word your message, word your ask, so that you're talking about the specific work your organization does, but you're still using more general words like run these programs. That helps you get away with the unrestricted ask. And also, research shows over and over and over, donors will give more if they're allowed to specify what they're giving, or if they're giving to something specific. Like, I would rather give your organization money to help put food in kids' backpacks. Okay, I would rather do the Get Backpack program rather than just give your organization $100. So I'm not really interested in just giving $100 to you. I'm interested in helping the backpacks. So you've got to talk about not the money or why somebody needs the money, but as much as you need to talk about the project or the impact of the gift. And the better you are about how you will use the money, how the money will be used, you will be more effective, because the studies about donors show that they really, really want to know how their money is going to be used. So let's talk about all the different channels. And I see I've got like 3 minutes to go through these channels, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it. But here are various channels you can use, and you can play around with how you might integrate all the different messages with a common theme and a common look. And let's talk a little bit about direct mail, because I see way too many organizations that are cutting back on their direct mail budget to, quote, save money, unquote. And the problem is that when you cut back on direct mail, your donors who are direct mail donors or direct mail readers are going to miss out. And you may be saving money, but you're probably going to lose money that you would be counting on otherwise. I was on the board of an organization that completely switched. They had a CPA running it, and she was all about the money, and they switched to digital, and they completely dropped their paper mailings. And I was appalled, because we know for a fact that donors who give are older, and older donors give more, and older donors read mail. So depending on what demographic you're going after, you need to be sure that your paper mail is in people's mailbox. There's some studies that show that paper mail is deemed more powerful, more impactful, has more weight, is a weightier ask than digital asks. And video, you know, I have learned how to do video. If you want to see me do video, you can go to my Fired Up Fundraising Facebook page, and you can see that I'm doing Facebook Live. I'm doing all these videos, and if I'm a boomer, if I can do video, you can do video. And Sandy talked about doing a video thank you page. I think a video on your thank you page is a lovely, lovely, wonderful thing to do. But you can use video in all sorts of ways, and video does not have to be fancy. It can be grainy. It can be offbeat. It can be fun. If you're using video on social, remember that social is supposed to be fun. So you've got to be playful, a little bit playful in social media with video. You know, talking about social media, you know, for a while there we were thinking we can't really raise money on social media, but now with Facebook ads, you can target the people who like your page. And you can target the demographics of people who you think in your community who are interested in X, Y, or Z. And you can run Facebook ads. And this is a really nice Facebook ad because this is very specific about what your money can do. Right now, they're not even asking for a gift, but they're saying, like us, and we will vaccinate, like us, and we will vaccinate 0 children against polio. Well, it looks to me like I want to do more than just like. Frankly, this particular ad is visually compelling, but it confuses me. I want a very explicit ask in my ads so that nobody has to think. And I want to tell you, let's see, one more thing about FaceTime. You know, the phone and person-to-person, face-to-face, the telephone and face-to-face are more intimate. They're far more personal than the spray and pray efforts that we send out through digital and print media and social media. You know, if you can call your donors or if you can make face-to-face phone calls, you will raise more money. There's no question. Simon Scrivener is my new go-to phone call expert, and he is just so wonderful. If you ever have a chance to see him at a conference, go see him, because he runs a telephone fundraising company out of Ireland. So remember that the phone call strategies are just so powerful. Oh yeah, and there's the article from Simon. So real quickly, I just want to share with you that I do have a special program. We had 7 of the smartest people in the world, I guess I'm including myself, I don't know, about fundraising, and we did a series of webinars, and it was just amazing. I want to tell you a quick story that last year, somebody who took our series of webinars on year-end fundraising campaigns, she doubled her take, she doubled her goal, doubled what they did last year. And here's what she did. She did, as Sandy talked earlier about a thankathon or a warm-up or an impact report, they decided they didn't do their thankathon until November, and they sent out their appeals in December. But their warm-up piece to the donors was an impact report that was quite personalized, an impact report that was quite personalized. And other organizations have used thankathons as warm-up tools before the ask. So there were a number of strategies that she did. She used the multi-channel approach. She had a consistent theme and design and similar look, similar brand, similar goal, similar set of stories, and whammo, they doubled their year-end goal. So just know that this is very possible and it's not that complicated. So now I'm going to close out and we're going to take some questions right now, right?
Indeed. And actually, before our questions, I have one more poll here, actually pertaining to what you were just discussing, Gail. And we're curious for some feedback from our attendees. So which of the following, outreaches and techniques are you planning on adding to your 2017 year-end campaign that maybe you haven't utilized yet? So what are you thinking about adding to this upcoming year? Go ahead and select your responses. Hit the submit button. Getting lots of responses coming in here. Excellent. I'll leave it open for another 10 seconds or so. Going once, going twice. Excellent. Let me close that poll and I'll share the results. And the clear winner here is video, followed up by a social media plan. Excellent. Hide those results. Okay, so we're going to switch gears for a few minutes at this point just to answer any questions that folks may have. Now, our first question today is for Sandy. So we're a small, young, relatively unknown organization. How can we compete with the big hitters for charitable donations?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing is I wouldn't even worry about what the other organizations are doing. No matter what size your organization is, stay in your lane. Focus on what you do and what you do well. Get out in the community, tell your story, bang your drum, let people know what you're doing that makes a difference. Because part of the problem when you start looking at competition, you're going to get scared and you're going to back off. And the thing is that people give to organizations that set their hearts on fire. And those bigger organizations may have donors that really don't care about your cause. So focus on the ones who do care about what your organization is doing and give them a great experience. Tell them something that sets their heart on fire and you'll be fine. You won't even have to worry about the competition.
Excellent. Now, just a reminder to our attendees, if you have a question for us, feel free to type that into the questions panel on your webinar control panel there on the side of your screen. Okay, Gail, I have a question here for you. So for the follow-up letter, should you weed out the donors who have already given and only send it to those who haven't yet given?
I would definitely weed them out if you possibly can, because I think it'd be very awkward to resolicit. But that also means your database systems and back office people have got to be really on point and up to date so that they can do the correct pull for the follow-up letter. Good question. Good question.
Indeed. All right, a question here for Sandy. How important is a thankathon in addressing non-monetary donations?
So if you have somebody who's given you either professional services or they've given you stuff, you have to ask yourself, does that matter? Does that help you fulfill your service? Does it help you fulfill your mission and provide service to people? And my opinion is if people are willing to give you their stuff, they may also be willing to give you their money if they have a good experience with you. So I would include those in-kind donors in a thankathon as well.
Excellent. All right, we're going to pivot to Gail for our next question. So this attendee was wondering about advice on reaching out to businesses in reaching their year-end charitable giving. Any thoughts on that, or how one might go about that?
Many corporations and businesses, the larger ones, allocate out their, don't do year-end charitable giving. They allocate their contribution budget out at the beginning of the year, the calendar year, and even I would think that requests right now may go into 2018 pool. Now, smaller businesses may be making charitable gifts. So again, one thing I want to point out that I wasn't able to earlier is that I want you to think of this appeal as like the culmination of everything you've done with your donors all year. And if you've been doing a great job in engaging them and communicating with them and inviting them in and inviting them to events, sending them cheerful and thoughtful and high impact communications, then your year-end campaign is going to be successful. And if they haven't heard from you at all, the corporations, and all you want to do is show up in October and November with an ask, you're not going to be as successful because that makes the donor feel like an ATM. So I think corporations, you need to plan early and often. The larger the company, the better, the earlier.
All right, another question here for you, Gail. If a donor originally came to us via email, should the renewal appeal be through email only?
Well, we know for a fact that donors who give or respond to both email and print are going to be more loyal donors. They're going to stick around. And we also know for a fact that donors will receive a direct mail letter and then they'll go online to make their gift. So I think that you want to try to do cross channels on that. And I frankly also think that the email thank yous get lost but paper thank yous land in the donor's brain far more accurately than the email thank you. So you can have an email thank you page, like right after you make the gift, whammo, the thank you page shows up and the donor's crying because they see everybody saying thank you. If you want to see a good thank you video page, make a gift of $5 to Doctors Without Borders and watch their donation process and look at the thank you video and knock it off. I think you should knock it off, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're kind of coming up on the end of our time here, but we do have one more question, and this is for Sandy. We don't have a quote-unquote list. How should we go about finding an audience for a snail mail campaign?
I'd start by asking board members, staff, volunteers, whoever you've got, to think about 5 to 10 people that they know that they would feel comfortable reaching out to. You know, it's like having a bullseye. You want to start in the middle of the bullseye with people who are already very close to your organization and then work your way out. And people who are sitting on your board are leaders of your organization. Then they should be able to help spread the word. Volunteers a lot of times can be really good at this too, to help bring additional people in. And then there are a ton of other strategies that you can use. There's actually a couple of articles on my blog that talk about where to find new donors when you have a really small organization.
Excellent. Wow, great content. Thank you both for being our speakers today and contributing your knowledge to our event. Now, I do want to mention, if you as attendees are interested in discovering how to accelerate your fundraising and donor engagement programs, you can always speak directly with an expert at Mobile Cause by calling 888-661 or by visiting mobilecause.com/free consultation. Now, I know we weren't able to get to all the questions today. There were a ton coming in there at the end, so we will be collecting those questions, and we'll follow up with each of you individually after our webinar today. Now, again, just to close our event, I'd like to thank our wonderful presenters for sharing their knowledge and being willing to present for us. And thanks to all of you as attendees for supporting our organization and showing up today. You'll each be receiving the webinar recording and the slides to our presentation shortly. And then stay tuned for our year-end infographic and ebook in the coming weeks. And our webinar next month, where we'll talk about best thank you strategies that encourage more giving. That all being said, we're going to go ahead and close out the event for today. Thank you all, and see you next month.